Brothers and sisters, we're here in the midst of an ordinary miracle. It's almond blossom time here in the Central Valley. Everything looks incredibly ethereal. You see rows and rows and rows of magnificent almond trees, and they're all at the height of their bloom right now. We're with Steve Koretoff and Purity Organics on the Koretoff Ranch here in the vicinity of Fresno, in the midst of the Central Valley. All of this land of wonderful fertility used to be a great inland sea. And Steve, I just would like to say it's a pleasure and privilege to be here indeed. And I'd like to start, or to begin, by asking you, just how long has your family been farming?
My family came here right after the turn of the century. They immigrated from Russia and did it the hard way through Brazil and working up through the Panama Canal. And our family got here to the Kerman area about 1910. 1910. And at that time, this area, some of the land was developed, but not much. This is pretty much just arid desert land here. Arid desert. And over the generations, little by little, we've built things up, and my son and daughter and niece will be our fifth generation. Fifth generation, 5 generations here on the California earth. And I understand, you know, once we were talking, you also told me that they had made a stopover on their way over at the Panama Canal, and they did a bit of digging, so to speak. Yes. So they came here basically with their shirts on their backs. Yeah, and that's the reason why they immigrated into Brazil, is because they were able to work off the passage. To work off the passage. To work off the passage in Brazil, and when they got enough money, then of course they moved. They heard there was work in Panama. They went to Panama. Unfortunately, a lot of friends and family didn't make it out of Panama because of malaria and other things. And then they migrated actually into Mexico. There's still a large Russian population in Guadalupe. And a lot of people my grandparents' age have retired and gone back to Guadalupe. But our family ended up here in the Kerman area because we were farmers in the old country and we wanted to be farmers here. You were farmers in the old country, you wanted to be farmers here. And just as a ballpark figure, you know, just how many acres do you have under cultivation? Right now we're farming right at about 600 acres. 600 acres, which is a tremendous amount for California. And most of that is planted in almond orchards. Yes. A little over 500 acres is in production. And then the other 100 acres is acreage that we've either pulled the trees out or we've replanted, and they're not quite to maturity age. Not quite to maturity as yet. And just as also as an approximation, last year, how large was your almond harvest? Last year, our personal on our own ranch was right at about 850,000 pounds. 850,000 pounds. Okay, which is getting up there, which is close to, you know, which is, you know, just short of 1 million pounds, which is rather impressive indeed. And now, just as comparison, just as a ballpark figure, so it was 850,000 pounds. What was your production in 2013? In 2013, we produced on our own ranch probably at least 100,000 pounds more. I'd have to go back and 100,000 pounds more. So there has been a decrease, a diminution. Yes. And to what do you attribute that to? A part of that was weather-related. In California, we had a very short winter last year. It got warm very easy. This time last year, it was 85 degrees here. So the heat came on early. The trees were stressed a lot earlier in the season, and they were stressed for a lot longer time. They were stressed, So, for some reason, the trees didn't set as much crop as we had expected. And part of that, we come to find out that the trees actually, it can get too warm during pollination, during bloom. Yeah. So the pollen itself will actually burst in temperatures over 80 degrees. And then also on the bloom, the pistil, or the part that's pollinated, will actually, when it gets too warm, if the tree stresses at all, that will shrivel just a little bit, and it makes it impossible for the pollen to enter into the ovary of the bloom. And so between the high temperatures damaging some of the pollen in the field, and then the shriveling, kind of, as they say, a perfect storm.
I see, because this is something new to me. Because I did know that during the winter months they have to have so many hours of chill. Almond has to have, and they have to have tranquil conditions, as we have right now during the critical bloom time. But I did not know that temperature also during bloom time is an important element too. And
yes.
For the first time, you're experiencing unusual high temperatures, or at least you certainly did last year.
Yes, yes. This is something a little unusually high temperatures are something that are a little bit unusual for us. We've experienced low temperatures. Bees don't like to work until a temperature reaches about 50 to 55 degrees. And in the past, we've had it to where we don't exceed 50 degrees until late in the day, and so we've had shorter windows of opportunity. One of the things about these blooms is that a bee will not pollinate or will not work a bloom until it's ready.
Until it's ready, so it knows exactly.
It knows exactly when's the right time, and that window of opportunity is only 72 hours. So we've got blooms that are opening at different stages over about a week's time, and the bee only has 72 hours to service each one of those blooms.
That's amazing, and the bee knows instinctively exactly what to do. That is just a wonder. We see so many miracles around us, and we are closed off, or we close ourselves off to them. Talking about bees, as our brothers and sisters well know, we hear so much on Facebook and the internet about the die-off of bees. Bees are absolutely essential to your operation.
Absolutely.
How do you deal with that?
A lot of our bees are brought in. Our bees, the last several years, have come in from Louisiana.
From Louisiana?
They're wintered there, and so they're in a climate that's a lot more conducive to what bees need. Bees basically need forage, which means even though it's wintertime, they need somewhere where there's flowers and blooms, and this is the time of the year when the bee gets a chance to rest and to build up the hive and to store the honey. And unfortunately, here in the western United States, as everybody knows, we've had some really bad drought years, and we're just simply not able to get that forage and let the bees get the rest that they need. And so this is part of the reason why bees are being brought in from somewhere else. So the drought primarily is one of the largest contributors to some of the bee issues that we have. Colony collapse disorder is one of the things that they talk about. Sometimes the whole hive will just fly away and leave the queen. Other times the bees die off, and they're not sure what any one thing is, but rather talking to one of the top bee scientists here in California, he stated that it's his belief that it's a combination of different factors. We have the boromite that causes infection in the bee, and it causes them to die. There's viruses. There's, of course, pesticide pressure, and then the lack of forage. The bee not getting that time, like you're talking about, the trees need a certain amount of dormancy. We need on average 8 hours a night of sleep for us to function right. The trees need a certain amount of time to be rested in the wintertime, and the bees need a certain amount of time to build that hive up, and for the queen to lay the eggs and to have the fresh bees there. And so while we're experiencing these drought conditions, it's very, very difficult. And they're finding that when they feed the bees rather than the bees taking natural forage, that it's not as productive for the hive. And this is part of the reason that a lot of almond growers are having to source bees from out of state, because there's simply not enough bees.
There's not enough bees
in California. We've always over the years preferred California bees, but we're getting into a situation to where it's just very, very difficult to source them. And we're hoping that the weather will change, and that perhaps the state of California and the federal government, whether it be BLM and the U.S. Forest Service, do a little bit more work to help maybe identify more areas that beekeepers can use for forage. The Forest Service and BLM are already doing that a little bit. I've talked to some people I know at the state of California to see if there's perhaps some land that's not being used that would be good winter habitat for bees that beekeepers can access.
Oh, that makes that's a beautiful thought. That makes so much sense. You know, instead of bringing them in here from thousands of miles away, to just keep them here in California the whole time. That's a beautiful thought. Now, on your 500 or 600 acres, you know, just what number of hives does it require to fertilize, you know, to fertilize your trees?
Yeah, we prefer to put on about 3 hives to the acre.
3 hives to the acre.
So that's about, with the total acreage, that's about 1,800 hives.
1,800 hives. And just out of curiosity, in each hive, do you have, I've heard it said that there could be as much as 100,000 bees in each hive? Is that correct?
I don't know the actual count of the bees, and the way that we measure the hive is by how many frames of honeycomb there is in each. And bees are kind of like people. The more crowded they are, the more they're apt to get out and move around. You know, us folks in the country move a little slower, aren't in a big hurry. But you get into New York where everybody's crammed on top of each other and everybody's moving a mile a minute, and so. A tightly populated hive is always a very productive hive, so we prefer a minimum of 5, but really look to 7 to 8 frames in a hive.
Oh, that's amazing. And someone once, a beekeeper once told me that you know, a bee works day and night. It works its whole productive life, and all it produces in its lifetime is a 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey is produced by each bee. But then again, in each hive, you have tens of thousands of bees. That's an amazing, another miracle. So, Steve, it seems to me there are so many knife edges in your business, so many conditions that have to be met, so many things that have to be just right in order for the almonds to occur, in order for you to get a significant and substantial crop. A whole many different factors, and they all have to coincide and work. And that's one of the reasons why I imagine that almonds are grown, you know, only, as my understanding, in Spain, in Portugal, in Turkey, around the Mediterranean basin, and yet here in California, you produce something like 80 to 90% more than double the almonds of anywhere of the rest of the world combined.
Yeah, California accounts for 80% of the world's supply of almonds.
80% of the world's supply of almonds. And between you and me, Steve, you know, nothing can, because we've all been to trade shows in Europe, and where they have European almonds, and nothing can compare with a California nonpareil or a California Carmel almond. These are varietals that have been created right here in California, and in appearance, taste, flavor, nothing can compare. California almonds, by far and away, are simply the best. Then a couple more questions. How do you bring fertility to 500 acres of almond trees?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a number of organic tools that we can use. There are various materials that are made out of, such as chrysanthemum flowers. We've worked with the UC Cooperative Extension. They've done a lot of testing here on this farm for pheromone testing, for mating disruption, for the worms and different things. So we're looking for a lot, as far as insects are concerned, we're looking for a lot of non-lethal means, or something that's specific to the insect.
Yeah.
A lot of the insecticides over the years are what they would call a broad spectrum, and it kills everything in the field. And the problem with that approach is that a lot of the insects that are out here in the field are actually beneficial. And some of those bugs actually help keep the bad bugs in check. So if we go in there and we kill their enemies, but we kill all of our friends as well, we're in a kind of bad shape, because it doesn't take very many insects to come in here and take over the orchard again, because there's nothing there to keep them in check. So the measures that we're using, we like to look at it as more, we're giving nature a little bit of a help in the right direction, rather than trying to conquer it.
A nudge.
A nudge.
A nudge
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. But to get back to my original question, with 500 acres of trees, that means tens of thousands of trees. What do you do to fertilize the trees year after year?
Right now we're using a combination of composted dairy manure.
Composted dairy manure.
And then a composted turkey manure that has been treated to make sure there's no salmonella in it, and then they press it into a pellet. And we basically broadcast that here on the floor, and then we till it in. And so no liquid nitrogen, no oil-based products, as you're well aware. We can't use those here. But one of the things that we've noticed, myself especially, is with the organic, if you come out here after a rain or after we irrigate, you'll see a lot of little mounds, similar to a like an ant.
Yes. Yeah.
But they're actually gophers, or not gophers. I'm sorry, worms.
Worm.
And we have earthworms, especially after this last rain. I've never seen earthworms push up like that. And what that tells us is that our soil is really fertile. It's really healthy, because we have earthworm activity that we never had like this before. And so this gives us an idea that we're getting the balance of organic material and nutrients in check.
Oh, that's so encouraging. I'm so glad to hear that. But the bottom line is that all of this great Central Valley, this great immense flatland, which is bordered by the Sierra Mountains to the east and the coastal mountain range on the west. This was once a great inland sea for millennia. It was a great inland sea, and that's the bottom line as far as the fundament of fertility here in the Central Valley. It was once a tremendous sea for thousands upon thousands of years. All of this is fascinating, Stephen. So I just want to ask you, just to get back to we're now in the 4th year of our drought. Suppose that the drought continues on a couple years more. How do you expect to meet that challenge?
That's real difficult. We're looking at various ways to increase our water efficiency. We're looking to going into converting over to drip irrigation.
Drip irrigation.
And these are all things that work well in the conventional side. But one of the problems with drip irrigation and farming organic almond trees is gophers and squirrels. That's one of the ways that we can keep the gophers and squirrels in check in an almond orchard, is by flood irrigating. It floods the burrows, and they don't want to make a home where it's going to get flooded.
They sort of get the message.
Exactly. And so gophers will have a devastating effect on the roots, and it'll actually, just below the surface of the ground there, they'll go down there a few inches below, and they'll actually eat the bark off all the way around the tree, and they'll kill the tree. And so we really need to try to keep that in check. And so these are things that we're looking at, combining drip irrigation with periodic flood irrigation, so we can do that. The other thing with drip irrigation is you're putting a defined amount of water in a very small area. But trees aren't designed to have the roots grow in just a defined area. And so there are some issues when you do use drip irrigation. And what we want the trees to push out away from the crown, like they naturally would in a natural environment, and push out and pick up all of the nutrients that are available in the soil. And one of the best ways to do that is by irrigating the whole area, and then we're utilizing all of the microorganisms and everything that are making that necessary fertilizer available to the trees.
I see. So if you went with drip irrigation, it would not be one or the other, but a balance between the two.
That, in our opinion, that's the best approach. Is a combination. One, we can conserve some water without losing some of the benefits that we have from the flood irrigation.
And then, Steve, as a California family farmer, an organic farmer, who has pioneered in many respects, because as far as family farm goes, as far as family farms here in California goes, you're certainly at the leading edge, of almond production here on a family scale. And my question is this: what do you see as the main challenges and the main impediments and obstacles in the years ahead?
Yeah. Well, as you brought up, water is probably the number one in California.
Water is the number one impediment.
And I think that regardless of whether you're organic or conventional, if we want to grow food in California, we've got to have water. We have the most fertile land anywhere in the world. There's areas here in the Central Valley where the topsoil is literally 30 feet deep. It's the perfect soil for growing almost any kind of crop you can think of, but we can't do it without water. And our irrigation system and the way that we move water around for the cities and the farms in California is very antiquated. It's very inefficient, and we need to find better ways to move water around and to stretch it and help it because there's so many of us, and we don't really need farmers and cities fighting for water. We need to be working together for a solution that where the city has the water that it needs for its people, and the farms have the water that they need to produce the food for those people in the city. But it needs to be a collaborative effort. We all need to work together because we all have to have water.
The word is cooperation then. The
Yes.
word is cooperation, which is such a vital word in this world of all against all, or war of all against all. So that's a beautiful thing. So instead of so much of the water being diverted for Los Angeles or for San Francisco, that has to be looked at afresh and anew, and some sort of new balance has to be made.
Yes. We're one of the things that has us a little bit worried is as a result of the multiple year drought. There's some pumping regulations that are coming down, and some groundwater restrictions. And what we're afraid of is the restrictions being so severe that we can't continue to farm. And some of the numbers that we're hearing from the preliminary reports are only going to allow us to pump 1/3 of the water that we actually need to grow a crop.
A third?
1/3.
You even begin to mix. That's a very, very serious challenge.
Yeah, so the field that we're in right now doesn't have any surface water. We don't get any water from the Sierra Nevadas at all. So we have to pump the water. So if there was a restriction that came in and said we had to cut our water use in half here, that would be the end of this orchard, because there's no way that we can grow almonds with half of the water we're using right now. It's just impossible. We know that there's a lot of concerns from people about the growing almond industry and its impact on the use of water and demands of water, but in most cases, almond production is replacing another crop. So you're not looking at a crop that's actually taking water that wasn't there before. And what we're seeing a lot of is a lot of farmers that are west of this area are actually taking all of their water from their whole farm and they're consolidating it onto a smaller part, and they're maybe not planting cotton or other crops, and they're planting an almond tree or a pistachio or a walnut or a grape.
Beautiful.
But they're actually taking land out of production, consolidating that. And so sometimes when I read these reports about how farms are expanding and there's more farmed land, it's not quite, that statement doesn't quite match what's really happening. The local irrigation district out west of here, Westlands Irrigation District, has taken 250,000 acres out of production in the last, I guess it's been about 20 years. And so 250,000 acres has been taken out of production because of water issues and conserve water. So sometimes that's why farmers feel like they're getting squeezed on water, is because we see that a lot of our supplies and things that we used to get are diminishing and diminishing and diminishing, and we're kind of being blamed for the water problem, but we're not the one causing the drought. The simple fact is that the population in California is growing. The cities are growing. There's more people that need more water. And if we don't work collectively and cooperatively to come up with some way to store more water and to be able to move it around better, we're in for big problems in this state.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things is we really appreciate you coming out here and meeting with us, because a lot of people forget that a significant part of California's economy is actually based on agriculture. And if you remove agriculture from there, it really hurts the California economy as a whole.
Absolutely.
And so we are farmers because this is what we know, and this is all we've ever done. We'd like to at least have 1 or 2 more generations. We'd like to get to 6 or 7 if we could. But at the same time, we recognize that this water issue is not just a farm issue. It's not just a city issue. It's a California problem, and we need to come up with a solution for that.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a, that sounds so. The question is cooperation, harmony, sitting down together, we're all interested, in talking things over and somehow working out, striking a balance. That sounds like a very, very beautiful thought, Steve. And I want to say I'm glad I came out here, from the big city of Berkeley, because this renews, just meeting you and listening to the challenges that you face every single day, and what a really knife-edge thing it is to produce almonds, because so many factors, so many conditions, the fertility, the water, the temperature of the air, sufficient number of bees, all of these conditions have to be right in order to produce an almond. And the fact is that here you are as a family farmer, and you're making it happen. This renews my faith and hope, because the hope in this country happen to be family farmers, because family farmers happen to be the true husbandmen and the guardians of this California earth. And that's really what it's all about. Stephen, it has been a privilege and a pleasure indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.